What's up, everyone? Welcome to my channel. Today's video, we will be going through a fantasy football mock draft, 16 team PPR in ESPN format. We have a couple minutes until the first draft pick. I do not go until 5 minutes from now, so I've got a little while. So I'd want to take the time real quick for those of you that are going to be tuning in later to talk a little bit about my channel before I get to this draft. So I do advice videos on different kind of stuff for fantasy football. So if you look at my channel and check it out, I do a lot of content in prep for the fantasy football season. So I've gone through every team preview leading up to the NFL season. I've talked about all the positions on those teams, which ones I like and don't like for the position they're going to be able to go in the draft. And then I've also, leading up to in the weeks leading up to the regular season, I'm talking strategy on specific positions, as well as doing mock drafts on the weekends. So I'm about to do a mock draft. But if you look at my description in the link that's in this video, you will notice that I have a video of link of my quarterback strategy and my kicker strategy. So I've talked about some things in those videos about what you can look for in terms of a quarterback you can draft and a kicker that you can draft, and where to take them and when, what I do for strategy. So if you're interested in more detailed explanations of that, you can check it out. You can also check out my channel as well if you want to see a wide variety of other content. I enjoy playing guitar, and I make videos on that. So I have a video that I just put out not too long ago about Christian music, because I play Christian music in my spare time and for churches. So I wanted to share that as well. And so you can check that out if you're interested. Also, I do covers of some other songs too. So if you want to see that, you can watch that too. And I also sometimes will do some other videos like reacting to songs, NBA stuff, etc. So if you're interested in all that kind of stuff, check it out. And then consider like, commenting, and subscribing if you are interested too. So I probably started this live video a little too early because we still have 3 minutes until this draft opens. But in general, what I'm going to do is just kind of talk about some of the observations that I've noticed so far in preseason. The biggest takeaway I have is that really you can't have too much of a takeaway on these teams. And this is kind of the way it goes every year in preseason. But I don't think you can get too hyped up over one player or another early on, because a lot of the starters aren't playing, and they're trying to make sure people stay healthy. The fact that there's only 3 preseason games really kind of puts emphasis on how you're going to evaluate weeks 2 and 3 of the preseason, because you have like less window now to look at these players. So I imagine that maybe not next weekend, but the weekend after that is where we can really kind of start to gauge these players and see how ready they are to step into like really, especially for a lot of these younger players, how they're going to look going into the regular season. So, but that being said, some names that have stuck out to me so far of guys that have looked relatively impressive are Romandre Stevenson of New England. So his numbers were a little bit skewed because he had a 91-yard touchdown run in New England's game. But he also, if you take that run out, he still had very effective stats. I don't have it in front of me right now, so I don't know what exactly his stats were off the top of my head, but he did have over 100 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. He was by far the most effective of the New England running backs that played in this game. And the reason I bring him up is that he's an interesting guy to look out for in very deep leagues, or in leagues where you're going to be taking somebody, you're just looking for a flyer to put out there as somebody who could give you some good value later in the season. So New England is known for being a running back by committee. So they are going to almost certainly rotate their running backs around. They don't really have any one guy that stands out as just being elite right now. So Romandre Stevenson playing the way that he did in that game a couple days ago is very encouraging, that he could be a guy that could take over the backfield. If you notice, I talked about him in my previous video where I talked about Patriots players that if you go back and look at their team preview, Romandre Stevenson was somebody that I mentioned as one of the few New England running backs that I like, because his hype value and the but where he's going to get drafted, which is probably undrafted unless you're in a very deep league, versus the amount of upside that he could potentially give you is a very good bargain. So he's one of the few New England running backs that I actually really like. So I would recommend taking a look at him, especially if he's going to be available on waivers. I'm very interested to see going into this draft today how much his value is driven up because of that one game. So that being said, I'm not super high on taking him over other players that you could draft at this position, but he is somebody worth keeping an eye out for. And then another one that really stood out to me as well is Larry Roundtree, the third, I believe, for Los Angeles Chargers. So they didn't play Austin Eckler in that game, but they did play Roundtree, Josh Kelly, and Justin Jackson. And Roundtree by far looked the best of the running backs. And I bring this up because he is somebody that after Austin Eckler, there's a little bit of uncertainty about who is really going to take advantage of that handcuff position. But Roundtree looked the most effective of the three running backs. So it's going to be interesting. If you're going to be drafting Austin Eckler, would you consider Larry Roundtree as somebody that you should take as your handcuff running back on your team? So just two players that stood out to me so far in the preseason, although it's very premature, and I'm not really changing my strategy necessarily of how I'm going to approach drafting those players versus other guys. So we got 2 minutes left until the draft. Draft board is open now, so I am at pick number 11. And unfortunately, I do not have the actual mock draft displayed on the side. I apologize, I do not have that yet. I will see if I can work on it, but there's a chance I might not be able to. But I'll try to just narrate through what's going on so you can kind of get an idea of what's happening as this roster is being built. So I'm pick number 11. Number 11 on the board for me is Austin Eckler, who I was actually just talking about. So he would be somebody that I would really like here in this position if he's still available. Other guys that I like that are around this range: Aaron Jones, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Najee Harris, guys like that. So we'll see what happens here. But generally, if you're not familiar with my strategy, if you haven't watched these videos previously, I am very big on trying to secure running back and wide receiver depth more so than filling out the quarterback and tight end positions early. So, and I know there's exceptions to this rule, but generally what I'm trying to do in these picks, which you should be doing as a fantasy manager, is trying to get an elite running back or wide receiver. I think a lot of people undervalue the importance of an elite wide receiver, though. So a lot of times if I'm in a position like 11 here, it's a little more important to me to lock up a guy like a Devontae Adams or DeAndre Hopkins or Tyreek Hill if he happens to fall to me. Guys that are just elite receivers that you can count on every single week as your wide receiver one, because generally it's harder to find wide receivers that can put up consistent production than running backs. Running backs, you can get guys late that can be very effective just because injuries happen. Things happen to the running back position more frequently than to wide receivers. And wide receivers, there's this pretty significant drop-off between great players and mediocre players. But for running backs, a lot of this changes as the season goes along. Draft board is open. Christian McCaffrey went number 1. No real surprise there. Dalvin Cook went next, and then Saquon Barkley went third. I think a lot of people were low on Saquon Barkley about a week or two ago, but now that he's healthy again and back at practice, people are he's starting to go back up people's boards again. Derrick Henry went number 4. So again, Austin Eckler is the guy that's he's at the draft board. He's 11 on the draft board on pick 11. So if he's projected to go to me and he's still there, that's what I would likely do. But I think there's a significant argument to be made if Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill is still on the board with Eckler, then I would definitely consider taking Adams or Hill over Eckler. So interesting here, Alvin Kamara went 5, and then Aaron Jones went 6. A little bit surprised at that, but I do like Aaron Jones over Zeke Elliott and Jonathan Taylor, who this guy drafted, who didn't pick up. They were technically listed above Aaron Jones, so I think that's a pretty good pick personally. Travis Kelce's still on the board. I kind of feel like he's not going to fall to me, but he is very much worth considering at number 11 if he does fall to me. This guy is taking his time. He's all the way down to the last 5 seconds. Let's see what he does here. Patrick Mahomes. Oh my. This guy obviously didn't watch my quarterback video. If you haven't watched my quarterback video, then check it out in the link below, because you should not be drafting Patrick Mahomes number 7 overall. That is not a good pick. Oh my. Unless he's trying to play like, what he could have just drafted Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill there and then drafted Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd round, and he still would have been available. It's just bad fantasy management, because he could have had the stack. It would have been very helpful to him, but now he didn't do that. And now this guy who's coming up next is also taken every single second of his pick. So probably going to draft another quarterback. Let's see. They drafted Travis Kelce. See, that's what this other guy that drafted Patrick Mahomes should have done, but didn't. Oh, my. Watch my quarterback video, and I explained everything about what the issue with taking quarterbacks early is. Travis Kelce went next, and then Zeke Elliott. So now there's one pick ahead of me. I'm kind of hoping that Davante Adams is still available here, because I will take him if he is. If not, I'm going to go with Austin Eckler. They took Tyreek Hill. So that was another guy I would be considering if he was still available. So basically the players on the board, the one that's highest on the board or the thing I should take is Jonathan Taylor, but I'm not confident with how he'll look with Wentz being banged up. Davante Adams is who I'm going to end up going with here, but Austin Eckler has an argument to be made as well. But I will be drafting Davante Adams. And, you know, again, having an elite wide receiver 1 is so important, because if you have a guy that is going to be the focus of the offense, like Davante Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill maybe, but you kind of get that split a little bit with Travis Kelce. But guys like that you just are going to get consistent numbers and targets all the time. It's very difficult to dig yourself out of a hole when you have to fill 2 wide receiver positions of guys that can't do that, versus running backs, where you can get some very good matchups for running backs, or get guys on waivers when injuries happen, players go down, and you can get guys that were generally drafted in the bottom of the draft performing like RB1s week to week if based on an injury. It doesn't generally happen with wide receiver 1s, though. Jonathan Taylor went next. Then Nick Chubb went. So the next pick I have is pick number 22. The pick that they're saying I should take is David Montgomery. I would prefer not to take David Montgomery if he's there, but there's not a lot of great running back options after him. There's DeAndre Swift. I'm a little higher on Swift than David Montgomery personally, but not very much. And then Miles Sanders is later on, J.K. Dobbins, Chris Carson, all examples of guys that are questionable, but depending, I could see them being decent value, but they're probably being reached for a little bit just because of the demand of running backs. Then after Nick Chubb, it was Austin Eckler and Antonio Gibson. Stephon Diggs went next. So if Najee Harris falls to me here, that's who I would go with. There's also Joe Mixon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Those are both guys I would also very much consider taking at 22 as well. But if they're not available, then I will try to probably go with another receiver and then get some running backs later on. Najee Harris went after Stephon Diggs, unfortunately. 4 picks. I'm really hoping that it'll be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. DeAndre Swift went before Mixon and Edwards-Helaire. That's very interesting to me. I can see an argument for that, but Detroit is that's a pretty rough-looking offense to me. So, yeah. So right now my team is Davante Adams, if you haven't already seen that. But this guy is taking his time now. DeAndre Hopkins still on the board. Joe Mixon actually just got taken. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, David Montgomery. So I'm really hoping it'll be Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but if not, there's some pretty good wide receivers that I would be very happy to take. Notably Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, also very good. Mike Evans, not a good pick. And then it was DeAndre Hopkins. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire is there. And I like Edwards-Helaire for a second-round pick, and I think that there's if you need a decent running back to take in the second round, he is a very good value for you. I think Chiefs O-line will be a lot better this year. I will be taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There's an argument to be made for taking Calvin Ridley or Justin Jefferson or A.J. Brown or somebody like that, but I'd rather get an elite wide receiver and an elite running back and then, try to piece together some of the other running back and wide receiver depth later. But, I mean, if you don't end up getting two elite running backs, like let's say in that example, instead of taking Mike Evans, he took DeAndre Hopkins, and then the next guy took Clyde Edwards-Helaire or something to that effect, then I would be very happy taking Calvin Ridley in that position, having two elite receivers, and then trying to build the RB depth as the season goes along, which you could be very successful doing that because you could lock in two elite wide receivers, and then all you have to worry about is the running backs and the flex, and you just know you have two receivers every week that you'll just give you huge point numbers. That is very underrated to have in fantasy football. So after I took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Justin Jefferson went next, Calvin Ridley. Those are both very good receivers. I've talked about Ridley a little bit, but Jefferson, same thing applies. Metcalf, I like Metcalf, but I think that he is inconsistent sometimes. So that's a little bit not as high on him. David Montgomery, Keenan Allen, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, and Miles Sanders. So things are picking up a little bit. I am at pick 43. I'm hoping that either Darren Waller or George Kittle will be here, but if they are not, then I will take a receiver most likely, or maybe consider Myles Gaskin if he's still here. But there's some decent receivers around the range of 43, like Adam Thielen, DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, Cooper Kupp, good value, Kenny Golladay, good value. And then you got a bunch of Bengals receivers who could be okay, like T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. Not as much high on them, but there are other people to keep an eye on too. So after it was Terry McLaurin, Miles Sanders, CeeDee Lamb, I think that's a good pick there. J.K. Dobbins. I'm iffy on Dobbins. Chris Carson, George Kittle, Allen Robinson, that's decent value too. Robert Woods. I would have Kupp over Woods personally, but I understand why people would draft Robert Woods. Darren Waller went next. So the two tight ends are gone. The players that are most likely going to be on the board are Amari Cooper, who I always avoid. Never draft Amari Cooper. That's not a good pick. Josh Jacobs, Darrell Henderson got taken. Adam Thielen, who just got taken too. So it's coming to me, and I've got Myles Gaskin and a bunch of receivers. So Myles Gaskin, I have like iffy feelings on. I feel like he could be good, but I would much rather have a receiver that I would rather count on more than reaching for somebody like Gaskin. Oh man, they did take Cooper Kupp. That's who I wanted. Huh. So I could go Chris Godwin. I kind of don't think Godwin will get as much volume as people think. Deontay Johnson is not bad, but I think as a third rounder, I'm not super high on that. Julio Jones, very underrated, but he's somewhat underperforming to a degree. DJ Moore has potential. And then you have Brandon Ayuk, Kenny Golladay also there as well. I'm going to go DJ Moore. I think he's got some decent upside with Carolina. Probably going to be their top receiver. I like that pick. Chris Godwin went next. And then we'll see how this continues to go along. Eventually, I'm very interested in getting Lamar Jackson if he's around this fourth round range. You have to kind of prioritize in some of these deeper leagues, like 16 leagues, getting some players that you really want earlier on than you may say, like in my video. I said for quarterbacks, you don't want to take any higher than the fourth round, maybe even the fifth round as what I would prefer. But there are situations where if quarterbacks are being reached for and I really want Lamar Jackson, then I would consider taking him at pick 54. So let's see where Lamar Jackson is on this list. He is down at 68. Most likely will not be available by the time he gets back around to me, right around pick 70-something. So I might very well take Lamar Jackson here because I think that there's some good value to be had if he's still available at this range. Running quarterbacks, very underrated. And if I could get Lamar Jackson here, especially in a 16-team league, I would very much be happy with that. Myles Gaskin after I took DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, Tyler Lockett, Myles Gaskin, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, James Robinson, Julio Jones, Odell, Josh Allen, and Kenny Golladay. So now it's to me. I've got some receivers like Courtland Sutton, Jamar Chase. I have a decent array of receivers. So Kyler Murray surprisingly ahead of Lamar Jackson a little bit. But personally, I would rather have Lamar Jackson than Kyler Murray just because of this. Lamar Jackson has shown that he can just carry a team. Kyler Murray's still got some questions to me. I'm going to go Lamar Jackson as my quarterback here. So I'm happy about that. And I generally, it's a little contradictory to my quarterback video I put out, but this is a 16-team league. So you probably have to reach a little more for the guys that you really want than you would have to do that. Than you would have to in a situation like a 12-team league or a 10-team league or even a 14-team league. So I'm taking Lamar Jackson 4th round, which is generally what I said is I make few exceptions to take as early as the 4th round, but generally I go for the 5th round to take a quarterback. But I like, of the pool of the guys that were available, I like that Lamar Jackson was still there, and I wasn't crazy high on any of the receivers that were on the board that I felt confident taking them instead. So yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that pick of Lamar Jackson. Travis Etienne went next. I would be higher on Etienne if he didn't also have James Robinson there. So I'm not exactly sure what Urban Meyer is going to do because I can kind of see him kind of bucking the system a little bit and going with both running backs in a committee. Courtland Sutton, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase went. I'm a little surprised they took Higgins. Somebody took Higgins over Chase. But the Bengals receivers, it's hard for me to get a gauge on them because I just don't know if he's even going to have, or Joe Burrow is even going to have time to get the ball downfield to them with the line that they have. Then it was Kyler Murray, Mark Andrews, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Robbie Anderson. So I'm at pick 75 now. And guys that are available around this range that could be interesting to me, Kareem Hunt at 76. That's definitely somebody that I want. Put him in the queue. A bunch of some tight end sleepers like TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts around this range as well. And I think those would be decent options too, especially Hawkinson, I think is a little more underrated as well. Then you got some other quarterbacks there like Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert. I would not be doing that since I already have Lamar Jackson. I'm only going with one quarterback here. Chase Edmonds is at 62 at the top of the board. He's a running back that I like that's going to be available late, but he's not going to fall to me. I'm just kind of know that because there's a bunch of auto picks that happened here. Aaron Rodgers kind of got reached for a little bit, and then Chase Edmonds, Javonte Williams, Laviska Shenault. I think Laviska Shenault is also a very good value to have as well. I'm really hoping Kareem Hunt will be here. Mike Davis is another solid running back option around this range as well. TJ Hawkinson. There's one pick. I'm really hoping he doesn't take Kareem Hunt. Brandon Cooks, DJ Chark, and Dak also went off the board. If they don't take Kareem Hunt, then I might have to go with like Pitts. No, they did take Kareem Hunt. That's the second time they've taken a pick right before it was. So do I go with Kyle Pitts here? I'm not super high on him, though. I know he could be good, but tight ends are a little iffy to predict. There's some decent receivers. I know people are freaking out about Michael Thomas, but the fact that he's still here too, I like that as well. I'm going to probably guess that he might still be available, though. So, I'm going to go with – I don't generally do this, but I'm going to go with Pitts because I think that he does have some upside for his position. But I think that there's a chance Michael Thomas could still fall to me at 86, and then I would take Michael Thomas. Mike Davis went, Leonard Fournette went, and then Russell Wilson is also off the board. So I got to make sure I get a running back later on. I'm not very high on Mike Davis because I think he's eventually going to get overtaken by somebody else in that backfield. Michael Thomas went off the board. there's some receivers later on that are interesting, like Jalen Waddle. Henry Ruggs, if you have interest in that. Cole Beasley, Zach Moss is another decent running back around this range who's available later on. Then you got some handcuff opportunity guys like A.J. Dillon, Jamal Williams, James Conner, guys like that. So running back is going to be a bit of a challenge for me, but there are some good sleepers that I'm going to be looking at later on that I will talk about as well. So some of the receivers that are here, Marquis Brown, since I have Lamar Jackson, I would probably consider taking him. I'm not very high on Marquis Brown, but he is very much a boomer bust guy, but when he's on, he can really be on. And I think that could be some great value for you if Lamar Jackson and him can get some of that chemistry back. Oh my, somebody took Gronkowski here. That is not a good pick. Nobody should ever be drafting Gronk over Noah Fant. That's just terrible. All right, so Raheem Mostert went, Damian Harris went, Michael Gallup, Ron Gronkowski, and Logan Thomas. So Noah Fant is not bad value here, but I already have a tight end right now. So I'm going to go with Marquis Brown. I'm going to go with the stack of him and Lamar Jackson. Marquis Brown is right now in my flex position, and I think that it's a very tenable flex where it could bounce around between other receivers that I might try to pick up here as the draft goes along. But there are some decent receivers that you can consider flipping them out with, like Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, Deebo Samuel if he's still here. Mike Williams has some interesting upside, as well as Cole Beasley. Darnell Mooney. There's a guy we're kind of starting to slip a little bit later on, but running backs available still. You got Zach Moss, Kenyon Drake, Melvin Gordon. Well, Zach Moss just went. Michael Carter is an interesting sleeper guy that people are interested in. And now the quarterbacks are really getting reached for, and you have Tom Brady off the board. I'm pretty sure you have, I would much rather have Jalen Hurts or Ryan Tannehill than Tom Brady. And they both just went too. So keep in mind when you're in these deeper leagues, you kind of have to reach a little more for the players that you generally do not take until later if you are higher on them, because the demand for some of these positions like quarterback and tight end are going to go up a little bit. But generally, as I said, do not get crazy and try to reach too high, because it's ultimately like fantasy football stays the same both ways. You want to make sure that you have great running back depth and great wide receiver depth. After Tannehill and Hurts, it was Melvin Gordon, Dallas Goedert. I'm also not very high on him either, or in Deebo Samuel. So my pick 107. Robert Tonyan is number 107 on the board. Not going to do that. A.J. Dillon or Michael Carter are both interesting options too. You have a bunch of receivers like Curtis Samuel, Antonio Brown, Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, guys like that. And after it was Deebo Samuel, it was Jarvis Landry, Robert Tonyan, Mike Gesicki, Devonta Smith, Jonnu Smith, A.J. Dillon, Michael Carter, Curtis Samuel, and Matt Stafford, which is not somebody that I really would want to take. So I really need a running back, but there are some good wide receivers here too. I think so. I've got a very boomer bust player right now in Marquis Brown. I'm going to take a more stable, consistent player that I also really like in Cole Beasley here. Cole Beasley will be my fourth wide receiver and first off the bench. I think having him in a tandem with Marquis Brown is a decent option to have. Running backs is going to be something that I will really try to focus on as we go through the draft. But there are some good ones that I like. So on the board currently for running backs, and I'm sure some of these will be available for me, James Conner. Could have some opportunity as a goal line guy in Arizona. Jamal Williams, not really as much him or David Johnson, but Ronald Jones at 123. If he is available to me, that is who I will definitely try to target. Trey Sermon, another decent running back in San Francisco who's got potential. Nyheim Hines, a good floor player, as well as J.D. McKissick and James White, especially in PPR leagues. And then you got some other good handcuff guys later on like Tony Pollard, Alexander Madison, etc. After Cole Beasley, Antonio Brown, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker. and Irv Smith went. Miami's receiving core is interesting. If you want to see my video on that, I talk about them, but I'm a little higher on Waddle than Parker, but I'm generally a little iffy on both. Although I think I can definitely see in this range them being decent value for you to take. 5 picks ahead of me. Henry Ruggs is the top player on the board. We now get into some other guys that are of interest as well. Tyler Higby went 7th round. That's interesting to me. He's a guy that is slept on too, who I think is rising up the draft boards considering the tight end landscape. Henry Ruggs, Marvin Jones, Mike Williams, Jalen Reagor, all the top 4 on the board. There's 4 picks ahead of me, so I suspect those will most likely be gone, but there's other interesting players, Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, Ronald Jones, Trey Sermon, etc. that definitely would consider taking here. J.D. McKissic is another guy I will heavily look at here as well. But Ronald Jones is the one that I will most likely want to take here because I think that people are drafting Fournette higher, but I think Ronald Jones has more opportunity to really be an every down back for Tampa. Nelson Aguilar. Trey Sermon went. Interesting. Bucks D. You should not be taking Bucks defense anywhere near that high. Yeah. Henry Ruggs went off the board. It's announced to me. James Conner is available. Bunch of receivers like Mike Williams, etc. Jamal Williams, running back available. But I will go with Ronald Jones. I like Ronald Jones' value with Tampa. Very good running back last year. He kind of struggled a little bit in the postseason, but throughout the regular season, this guy was the #1 running back for that team. And then I'm really hoping that J.D. McKissic will still be available to me at the next pick. I doubt it, but if he is, that's who I'm going to be looking at next. And I'm going to be looking to basically build some running back and wide receiver depth the rest of the way since I already have a running back or a tight end and a quarterback at this point. Next, after Ronald Jones, Evan Ingram, James Conner, Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones has some interest in me, but not enough to really want to take him. Mike Williams, not too much interest there. Jalen Reagor, no. Joe Burrow, he's pretty good quarterback value to take later on. Jamal Williams, if he could have opportunity if DeAndre Swift gets injured, but I just have questions about how Detroit's offense will look as a whole, and then David Johnson. So there's some starting to kind of scroll up the board. And when you kind of get in these middle rounds, it kind of can go all over the place. But I'm really hoping J.D. McKissic is here because I think that he is a good – or Nyheim Hines is also around here as well. Either of them would be good pickups because they give you a consistent floor value as a safe running back you can put in, especially if I'm in a position like I am now where I'm kind of trying to rely on getting some good running back sleepers later on to build my depth. And Nyheim Hines, sure enough, is off the board. And J.D. McKissic is, unfortunately, too. But I'm not panicking. I think there's some good value that I can get here later on that will be helpful. Also, the people that went off the board, Trevor Lawrence, T.Y. Hilton. I think he is going to be disappointing this year. McCole Hardman, Hunter Henry, good tight end to have. Darnell Mooney, another sleeper receiver of note. And Elijah Moore, who's also potentially a sleeper too. So some good running backs here. Tony Pollard, I like. Alexander Madison, I like. Giovanni Bernard, another decent running back for Tampa, but I probably will not go that direction since I have Ronald Jones. So Tony Pollard, if he is available to me, will most likely be the pick here I would want. Because if Zeke is underperforming, then I think Tony Pollard has some great value. That is who I'm taking here. And I have a pick and a couple picks. So goal was to try to see if I can get some more depth to my wide receivers and running backs the rest of the way and then take a defense and a kicker at the end. Another good player coming up on the board that I like, and I hope he's still available, is Russell Gage. I think he will be a very good receiver to have given Atlanta's challenges. The only reason I might not do that is because I have Kyle Pitts. So I'm not going to be freaking out if he's not available, but somebody to keep an eye on. Rashad Bateman is also interesting because I, again, have Lamar Jackson, so I can kind of play the chance of is Marquis Brown or Rashad Bateman more of this guy's go-to. You're putting a lot of faith in the Ravens, though, being a great passing team if you do that. So after Tony Pollard, Tua went, Harrison Butker went. That's a terrible pick. Watch my kicker video, and I will explain why you should not be drafting kickers in the 9th round. Just ridiculous. Michael Pittman, James White, good PPR running back to take around here. Jamison Crowder, Hayden Hurst, interesting. Gus Edwards, Eric Ebron, Ben Roethlisberger, and Latavius Murray. So running backs, and so guys available around here. Philip Lindsay has interest to me as like somebody that could of note in the Houston backfield. I might consider taking him here. There's also Russell Gage, who I really like. Giovanni Bernard. Tough call between those three. I think Russell Gage has some of the most upside here. I will probably go with Russell, but I really do need running backs. I'll go with Russell Gage, and then I'm going to try to focus on running backs mostly the rest of the way. I think there's some good ones to consider having. But yeah. Giovanni Bernard off the board as well. And then a series of defenses. Pittsburgh, Ravens, Bills, Washington, 49ers, and Broncos. Jeez. Well, I'm going to wait for defense personally, but it's just a very risky game to play when you just start reaching for receivers like this. Focus will be on running backs here. So running backs that are around the range that are left that are of interest. Darrington Evans, interesting handcuff. Tariq Cohen, interesting handcuff. Xavier Jones as well. You're mostly looking at handcuff guys, but you're trying to bank on guys with experience and people with opportunity that can step up. And I have 4 bench positions, so I will be really kind of scrubbing to look at some running backs that could be of value to me here. And then this dude who's drafting now is really taking his time. So Marquise Callaway went. That's a pretty good wide receiver sleeper to consider. Rams D. I'm a little surprised Rams D went later than some of those other defenses. Rondale Moore is the next pick. He's a decent receiver for Arizona, but Arizona has so many pass catchers, I just have a hard time seeing what his role will be. A lot of receivers going off the board here. Justin Tucker went off the board, and now it's to me. Darrington Evans, Tariq Cohen, and Xavier Jones are the 3 running backs around here that I will consider between, and I will personally here I'm going to go with Tariq Cohen because it gives me some the PPR guy that can give me a decent floor if he's around. But I'm generally not very high on Tariq Cohen in general. Saints, Darrington Evans went. Now we're really looking for some running backs that could be a benefit here. Tevin Coleman is, I think, another good running back to look at. That will probably be another guy we'll look at earlier on because he does have some early season value potentially as somebody that can come in and start the season. But he's probably going to get replaced by Michael Carter, I would imagine, as the season rolls along. Randall Cobb off the board. It's kind of, why is it taking longer now that we're in the 11th into the 12th round? It's very weird. Justin Fields. It's interesting. I would personally not take Justin Fields in the draft because it doesn't make it. The only reason that you would consider taking him is if you know he's going to be the starter. Like Trey Lance just went off the board too. Like those are not good picks because you're banking on, you fill a bench spot with a quarterback with one of those 2 guys. You're banking on the fact that you're going to have one of them, or you're going to have somebody injured and then they'll step up and play right away. But if you're not in that situation, then having them on your bench is just taking away. They're not going to play anytime soon. It's just taking away another guy that could be more beneficial to you. That's at least just the way I look at it personally. All right, so it's back to me. Xavier Jones. Running back went off the board. Some other guys, like kicker, went again. I don't know why people are drafting kickers. So I will go. Tevin Coleman has upside, but not much. Let's see. So he has struggled, but I'm going to go with Rashad Penny. But I think that he does have some interest to me because if anything were to happen to Chris Carson, which I think is very likely because Chris Carson, one, runs very hard, is getting older, and would be one of the candidates that I would think could potentially get injured. So Rashad Penny potentially stepping up as a running back would be very interesting to me too. A lot of kickers and random tight ends going off the board here. Daniel Jones and Baker Mayfield went off the board. Not good pickups there at all. So now it's getting back to me with some more players to consider picking up as handcuffs and whatnot. I will go here now that it's getting close to some of the positions of interest. I'm going to go with Tevin Coleman as a guy that could maybe start the season. If he gets dropped, then drop him. And then now we're getting back into some running back handcuffs. And actually coming up here is Romandre Stevenson, the guy that he kind of surprised in that first game against the Washington football team for New England. He's a guy I might very well look at to draft here if he is still available to me. Also, Ty Johnson is there. I don't have any interest in him at all. Justin Jackson, no. Marlon Mack, I really do not think Marlon Mack will have much of an opportunity at all. Boston Scott is actually a very interesting player to consider as a PPR running back for Philadelphia. If Stevenson is not available, I might do that. And then now you're getting really into the weeds of like Samaje Perine. Not really I really hope I don't have to go that route. So, down to the last 3 picks. And Ty Johnson went. Now people are taking kickers. Amon-Ra St. Brown is somebody that somebody took later on. I think that is actually a very good pickup to take late for Detroit. Should have a lot of opportunity. But now it's to me, I have a choice basically at running back to fill out my bench between Romandre Stevenson and Boston Scott. And I will go with Stevenson because I think he does have some upside with New England. I think this is a good position to take him. Going right around the level on the board that he was available. And in a deep league, 16 team like this, I think he is good value. So now I'm doing what I say I do. I wait to get a kicker and a defense in the last 2 rounds because I think that that's ultimately the way that you try to game this is you try to place more value on having your flex depth than defense and kicker, which a lot of times just end up streaming anyway. And sure enough, the Bears are a team that is around the range that's available to me. So if the Bears are there, I will take them. The Vikings are also around here too, but are slot higher. So the Vikings more than likely would be taken if the Bears are already gone. A lot of receivers coming off the board here that are interesting. Traquan Smith, John Brown, maybe with Las Vegas. I'm not super high on him. Dwayne Eskridge, a guy I do like. Alan Lazard, Van Jefferson. I would rather have Tutu Atwell than Van Jefferson personally. But to me, defense, I could pick between the Vikings and the Bears. I am going with the Bears. I think the Bears have better players, more upside. So I will go with Chicago Bears. And then now it's going to be taking a kicker in the last round, like I say to always do. Because the kicker, if you watch my kicker video, I got in the description. I have this all explained in more depth, but it doesn't make any sense to draft a kicker anywhere other than the last round. Byron Pringle, DJ Dallas, Robbie Gould, Jake Funk, running back for Rams. In case you're not familiar with him, those are all players that just went off the board. And then Jimmy Graham got taken off the board. It's not worth even considering Jimmy Graham on your radar on waivers either. So the total waste of a pick. Kickers that will be available in the last round that are of interest to me. Ryan Suckup just went, but he was of interest. Rodrigo Blankenship, very good kicker last year. Joey Sly. Kaimi Fairbairn is a bit of a good kicker in the past, but he's not a very challenging team, to say the least. Joey Sly available. So, yeah, I'm going to go here with Rodrigo Blankenship. And there's some good logic for that with the Colts, because for the Colts, going to have a decent enough offense. They got some good players, but is Wentz going to be able to convert in the red zone is a significant question. So that being said, Rodrigo Blankenship should have a lot of opportunities for field goals rather than extra points. I think that's a very underrated aspect of kicking that I talk about in my videos. So if you want to check that out, look at the description below. And then closing out the draft, Brian Hill, Kenneth Gainwell for Philadelphia, Michael P. Ryan, Derek Carr, Jared Goff, Zach Wilson. Why would anybody take Zach Wilson or take Jared Goff over Zach Wilson? Jared Cook, Zach Ertz, which is just not – he's probably not even going to play this season. Blake Jarwin and Gerald Everett. See, you should much rather take Gerald Everett higher than any of those three guys like Cook, Ertz, or Jarwin by far. So my roster is filled out now. We finished the draft, 16 league PPR. My quarterback was Lamar Jackson. My running back is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. My running back 2, Ronald Jones. Running back is a little bit weaker on this team, but I kind of did that a little bit on purpose to a degree because running backs is going to change as the season goes along. You can get some sleepers as you go through the season. Devontae Adams, wide receiver 1. DJ Moore, wide receiver 2. Kyle Pitts, tight end. Flex, Marquis Brown. Bears D, Rodrigo Blankenship, the kicker. And then my bench is Cole Beasley for Buffalo, Tony Pollard for Dallas, Russell Gage from Atlanta, Tariq Cohen, running back for Chicago, Rashad Penny, Tevin Coleman, who now plays for the Jets, and Romandre Stevenson, the rookie from New England. So I like this roster considering it's 16 teams. You kind of, when you get this deep into leagues, you kind of have to, take some flyers on guys, but these are players that I feel could have some opportunities if given their if in the right situation that I think is realistic to consider for them. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this video. Stay tuned throughout the next couple of weeks for more mock drafts and more advice videos gearing up to the regular season. But if you're interested, please consider checking out my channel. And I will see you guys next time. See you. Bye.